Happening, folks. I was completely prepared to tear today's movie to shreds as the next joke of a Jaws ripoff. With the exception of last year's Dangerous Animals, I haven't seen a decent shark movie in years. But as the proud grandson of a merchant marine, I am completely surprised to announce I love this movie. And I'm going to show you why right now. This is Beast of War. The movie opens in Australia in 1942 with a prologue that would have you thinking you were about to watch a proper war movie. And in a lot of ways, you are. We meet a troop of new recruits getting prepped to head off to war. They are boisterous and flirtatious, and there's plenty of young man animosity within this squad, fueled by Down Under's Aboriginal racial tensions. There's also no shortage of the type of raw enthusiasm fueled by the unbridled nationalism we have all but bred out of men in 2026, but that's a topic for another video. Mark Cole-Smith stars as Leo, the Aboriginal in the squad, and Sam Delich stars as Des Kelly, the ignorant Australian who's got an issue with Aboriginals. The boys eventually ship out with smiles indicating they've no idea what they're heading into, and before they're halfway to the destination, the air raid sirens blare, bringing the first act to an abrupt close as their ship is blown to bits. This first act sets a very serious tone. Every member of the battalion has that naive enthusiasm about them, and they can barely hide their nerves behind their young, bright eyes. Anyone who's been to war knows death can come for you at any time, but none of them were expecting to get taken out on their way to the big fight. Leo is among the survivors, and he saves his unconscious pal Will, played by Joel Nankervis. Most of the platoon is in bits, bobbing up and down in the water around the floating segment of the boat Leo's dragged them onto. As the screams of dying men fill the air, Leo and Will make the chunk of plane sturdy and buoyant enough to catch their breath on. Of the 200-odd men who shipped out, a handful survive, and they congregate together for safety. They conclude the current is bringing them slowly back towards Australia, and they reckon if they can get their hands on the motorboat floating 30 feet away from them, they might make it back home in a couple of days. And while the men are discussing the minute details of the matter, a gigantic shark takes one of them around the waist and pulls them under the water. This, folks, is a breath of blood-soaked fresh air. You're looking at a practical, prosthetic, rubber, real-life shark. There's something comfy and cozy about seeing an old-fashioned latex beast breaching the water. The instant I realized there'd be no CGI in this film, everything turned smooth sailing for me. But our fun doesn't stop with the soldier getting dragged onto the water. And just when the boys thought things couldn't get any worse, their pal's upper half resurfaces and the tone changes substantially. The boys start listening to Leo when it comes to the great white, and thanks to a quick flashback, we find out Leo knows a lot about sharks because he lost his little brother to one. Then somebody's blanket is pulled into the water, and they manage to get him back in, but he's now minus a leg. They tie it off as best they can, but without medical attention, everyone knows he won't make it through the night, so Leo decides to take a hop, skip, and a jump towards the motorboat using debris floating like stepping stones. And on his third leap, the shark introduces itself. They manage to fend her off just long enough for Leo to make it to the boat, but when they get it back, it is clear the motor's been mangled in the explosion. And that's when the shark decides to start testing their floating fortress, and that causes Des the dickhead to lose his cool and pull the pin on a grenade. But he's stopped by Leo, who reminds him they've only got 2 left, and they need to make them count. That night, when they fall asleep, Des lets go of the grenade he forgot to put the pin back into, and it rolls right next to Stan, who dives on it for the sake of the rest of his battalion, including Des. When Leo screams at Des for suggesting they just kick Stan's bits back into the water, the old racial tensions boil to the surface, and the most poorly timed wrestling match in history breaks out. And with no other option, they wrap Stan's heroic remains up in a burlap sack and feed him to the ocean. By ocean, I mean the humongous shark. Then they realize Tommy, the soldier with a head injury who doesn't know his ass from his elbow, ate all of the canned food they had left the night before, and that means they have nothing left to eat. That leaves Leo having to drink his own urine, and the rest of the squad finds it revolting and swear they'll never resort to it themselves, and they keep their words for about 20 minutes. And about 20 minutes after they've all drank their own urine, the skies open up, filling their flasks with fresh, drinkable rainwater. Overnight, Corporal Head Injury is dragged into the water after being warned a dozen times he's sitting too close to the edge, staring at plankton. And by the next day, everyone started to go properly loopy. And Leo, who was the impromptu leader of the squad, properly loses his shit, believing he needs to square off against the shark, thinking it was the same one that ate his little brother. But they managed to drag him back out of the water just in time to spot a passing plane. So they throw up some smoke signals only to realize the plane's not one of theirs, and some of the boys get cut in half. And as they're realizing the plane is doubling back to finish the rest of them off, they hear the ghostly sounds of one of their own sirens lodged into the shark's fin. Meaning it's coming towards them as well, and that leaves them stuck between the enemy bullets and Jaw's great-granddaughter. And the tension of the moment is surprisingly dense and well-balanced. Leo bravely grabs a machine gun and fires back at the plane while everyone else dives into the water. Des drags Teddy in with him even though Teddy's unconscious and covered in blood. And while Leo is taking a single 20mm cannon round through his midsection, the shark bloodies the water again with Teddy after Des pushes him out like an offering to save himself. And after they make it back on board, everyone knows what Des did, and knowing Teddy was Des's friend, Leo actually sheds a real tear in a film you wouldn't expect this sort of acting in. So they scuffle, and Des finally gets what's coming to him, or at least part of it. And with 3 of them left and Des delirious from blood loss, Des apologizes for what he's done and what he's like, and all 3 of them cry. And Will and Leo promise each other a drink at the bar when they get back home, knowing none of them are going to get home. But the crying stops the instant they see a Japanese soldier floating towards them on whatever's left of his plane. With Leo and Des immobilized, Will is the only one able to throw a grenade at him, and being the mechanic and the softest of the group, Will believes the Japanese soldier tossing his sword into the water means he's actually surrendering. And the second act is brought to a close when they all realize, of course he wasn't. If I can convey one thing at this point in this story, the second act flies past and the action never stops. With a total runtime of only 87 minutes, this movie hits you, and it never gives you a minute to get to the surface to catch your breath. And amidst all the action and the blood and the screaming and the limbs, there is actual acting in this film, which is not what you would expect from a typical shark movie. Or at least I wouldn't. The ensuing fight sees Leo kicked into the water, bleeding from his guts, but he makes it back on board, and right when things look like they're over for the boys, yet again, Des wraps himself around the Japanese soldier's ankle after everybody thought he was already dead, and he detonates an explosive, taking them both out. And with only Will and Leo left on the half-broken boat, Will lifts the Japanese soldier's flask of sake out of the water, and the boys enjoy that final drink they promised each other. And as they're drifting towards their slow, inevitable death, Leo makes peace with things. And while he's doing that, Will finds a floating toolkit next to the boat. But before he's able to convey that, Leo lifts the final grenade and launches himself into the water. As the shark comes to take him, he pulls the pin and trades his arm for the shark's life. As he's preparing to reunite with his little brother tells him, not yet. He's pulled back onto the boat, armless but victorious and full of pride, and Will repairs the boat engine with the toolkit, and the men sail back into the sunset towards Australia, their home, to the sounds of waltzing Matilda. This movie is hard-hitting with a simple premise and a genuinely tense atmosphere, and the practical shark makes such a difference to the overall tone. The acting is surprisingly solid, and from the second act onward, it is relentless on every front. And that is seriously impressive and surprising for a low-budget, single-location shark movie. If you can't tell already, I highly recommend this movie, even though I've totally spoiled it for you. If you've seen Beast of War already, I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments section. As always, thank you very much for watching my little video. Feel free to hit the like button and consider subscribing if you had fun. And until next time, folks.